So because it's just past 11, I am just going to kind of crack on and talk to you about everything to do with digital communities. Now, I originally put this webinar together because this is going to be a massive thing in 2024 and beyond. It has already started. I think it was Sprout Social's 2023 trend report, in which they had communities as a big part of it. And after doing kind of a lot of research and just kind of working with my own clients and putting proposals together, I always come back to the point of we need digital communities from social media and beyond social media as well. So that is why kind of I put this webinar together. So just a couple of house rules. I think you're all muted anyway, and I think your camera is off. But here are just some basic rules. So make sure your camera and microphone are turned off, which I think it's done automatically. Thank goodness I've found a platform that does that. Feel free to type any questions in the chat box or the Q&A box. I will answer all questions at the end. So if you pop them in there, I'll just do kind of a massive Q&A at the end. Like it says there, questions will be answered at the end, and this webinar is being recorded as well. So if you know anyone that would find this helpful, then I will put this webinar up on our website straight after this video. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and if you miss a point or you want to listen to a point again, then it is being recorded, so you can kind of look back on it if you need to or you wish. So just wanted to go through the agenda for today. So what we will cover. So what is a digital community? I think everyone on here might have kind of a basic understanding of what digital communities are, so I'm not going to kind of delve into that too much. Why are digital communities important? Brands that have established good digital communities, I've got some really good examples on there, which not only inspired myself, but I hope it inspires you as well, just to think about kind of how you want to build your digital communities. How can digital communities be built? Now, I have looked at a B2B and B2C for this, because I do know that there is kind of a wide range of people that are going to be visiting this webinar as well. I have experience in both B2B and B2C, primarily of the both B2B. So digital communities can definitely be built in a B2B sphere. So don't think because I'm B2B, I can't build a community. You can in your own way, and I'll kind of talk through how we can kind of look at that. Digital community strategy, so strategies of how to build your digital community. How can digital communities be measured? This is quite a big one as well, especially if you kind of say to your big boss, look, we're looking to build a digital community, and they're kind of turn around and go, okay, that's fine. If we're going to put this much budget into it, we need to know how much we're going to get back. So just kind of tips of how we can measure that. Upcoming trends, and finally just do a Q&A at the end. So there has been a couple more people that have joined, so I did say that I will answer all questions at the end, so pop anything in the chat and the Q&A box and I will answer it for you at the end. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself. I'm kind of going to go straight into it. But if anyone doesn't know who I am, there's a couple of people that I know definitely know who I am because I've worked with in the past. So hi. But just a little bit about me, really. So my name's Becca. I'm the founder and owner, put my teeth in, of Silly Goose Digital. I actually created Silly Goose Digital at the end of October, when I left my previous role as a brand performance manager at a Manchester marketing agency. I'd been there for nearly 5 years. Like I said, I've worked with primarily B2B clients, but also a little bit of B2C as well. And I looked at a lot of kind of brand performance strategy and primarily looked at social media marketing. So that's kind of who I am basically. And Silly Goose Digital was kind of created as an extension of your existing marketing team. So I wanted to create something that wasn't a faceless person. I do like to kind of integrate myself with existing teams. And yeah, I've created it as a playful agency for playful brands, both B2B and B2C, because B2B can be playful as well. So I'm going to stop talking about myself and I'm going to just move on So firstly, I wanted to go through an introduction to digital communities. So I'm not going to labor on this too much, but just kind of go into what digital communities are. So I've taken this by definition, but we will talk a lot more about how to craft your digital community, and hopefully the definition will come into itself as we move on. Digital communities, also known as online communities or virtual communities, are groups of people who interact and communicate primarily through the internet or digital platforms. You will see when a lot of people talk about digital communities, they talk about digital communities in the aspect of social media. But you can use other channels as well to feed into that. Social media is great for building a digital community because there's obviously a vast amount of people on there, and it's kind of easier to create a digital community rather than kind of paid Google search, for instance. But you do also have email marketing in there as well, which is a really good way to build up your community and nurture your existing customers and your new customers that come into that funnel as well. As I mentioned at the start, it's going to be an integral part of your brand strategy in 2024. Every single brand proposal that I put forward to now, and every single client that I work with, I implement community as a key content pillar or a key aspect to their marketing strategy, because it's just going to be massive. And at the end of the day, we are kind of getting, as humans, we are getting a lot more kind of, we don't want to put ourselves forward and interact with brands just willy-nilly, basically. We want to feel that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. All the great brands that I'm going to show in these examples kind of tap into that emotional aspect as well of building a digital community, and that's going to be key. So I've just put forward a couple of stats, and I've taken this from a Sprout Social report, as you'll see, and I just thought that it was really, really interesting. So here talks about kind of what we know and why building a digital community is important. Now, the digital communities and social media communities in general is such a broad term because it encompasses so much. So it can encompass stuff like, for instance, responding to your customers and replying to comments. That is part of building a digital community. But it also goes a lot deeper than that. It also talks about kind of aligning with brand value, with values that align to the customer, making sure that the brand values align, supporting customers and making people feel like they're part of those relevant conversations as well. And also user-generated content comes into that. So digital communities, when I talk about that, it's such a broad sphere. But hopefully as we go along, you can kind of look at the different strategies that we can use to build those communities. So just put forward some more stats. This is from Amity, I think it is, but it was a really good report that came out and just basically spoke about how many people, how many customers do participate in a digital community. As I've mentioned, digital community is a very, very broad term, so just keep that in mind whenever I talk about it. But digital communities definitely did increase due to COVID-19, and we know that kind of use of certain platforms increased from then as well. So for instance, TikTok increased due to COVID-19. So there has been an overall uplift in people being involved in digital communities. Oh, apparently they're doing an optimization on video quality. Oh, I always love when we're going to have technical errors. Hopefully I'm back. Let's get back onto this one. I'm just going to put a poll up. Am I back? So just let me know if you can still hear me, okay? Okay, so fabulous. It would help if I start that poll. I think I am. Okay, fabulous. So yeah, so as I was saying, there is kind of an uptick since COVID-19. And 98% of people who belong to online communities feel a sense of belonging to that group. This is one thing that I'm going to talk about, and it's going to be based on being part of something bigger than yourself. And when I talk about this, sometimes it's hard to actually kind of discuss what I mean by that. But as customers, we love to be part of something that's necessarily bigger than ourselves because it makes us feel a certain way. And this is what a lot of this is going to be about, is tapping into the emotions and feeling certain ways. And an online community can help organizations improve engagement by 21%. That is massive when it comes to kind of algorithm updates, which happens all the time, as we will know if a lot of us work in social media. And the importance of engagement as well. And having an engaged community is probably what's most important as well. So just making sure that those that are within the community are engaged. So we're going to talk about strategies of how to do that. And also a big one is that a strong digital community can help improve overall revenue as well. So when a customer feels connected to a brand, they are more likely to buy over a competitor and recommend the brand. This was, the more I kind of talk about this and this report that came out from Sprout Social, it's actually a really good report. So after the webinar, for everyone that's joined, I will email over this report so you can have a little look into it. There are some other graphs, etc., which will be really, really helpful as well. So it might be worth looking at that report. But this kind of just shows what customers are more likely to do when they feel more connected to a brand. A lot of it is about long-term loyalty. And I know when I created this webinar, I did talk about customer retention and getting new customers in. Obviously, they're two different parts of the funnel, but getting new customers in really, really helps with kind of building that community and getting them into that community. But what about when they're in that community and making sure we nurture those customers in order to retain them, especially if we're in more of a B2C industry where what we're selling has quite a high retention rate or can have quite a high retention rate. For instance, if we're I don't know, what do people buy a lot? Let's talk about the food industry. Okay, so if you're going to a supermarket such as Asda, it is key to kind of retain that as well and retain those customers, because you're going to want them to feel nurtured and that they're part of it, and building those loyalty schemes, etc. So that is all part of building those digital communities as well. And obviously doing that can help build and increase your overall revenue. So now we're going to talk about some really interesting digital community examples. Some of these inspired what I'm doing with kind of my own clients as well, and my own proposals that I'm putting forward to clients. So hopefully they'll inspire you guys as well. So the first one is Gymshark. I love Gymshark, and whenever I talk about digital communities, I always talk about Gymshark and how good Gymshark are when it comes to building that community. And they do that in a really, really good way. A lot of it is based on influencer marketing. And the key part of this is that the influencers that they choose almost align to their brand. They are people that actively go to the gym. They are people that are actively kind of fitness-based influencers. And they are people that align to their own brand values. And that makes me as a consumer feel like they're aligning to my values as well. So influencer partnerships is a massive part of the digital community strategy, and content that resonates with their audience as well. Within their influencer partnerships, they do also have brand ambassadors. So if I'm following an influencer, for instance, and I really, really align to kind of what they talk about and who they are, having a brand that aligns with their values and also aligns with mine is so key. So having those brand ambassadors, I can't emphasize this enough, having those brand ambassadors that align to your business values and your target audience's business values is massively key. They also do community events as well. So they get their customers involved in community events and invite the influencers there and have kind of those events. And also exclusive releases and promotions. If you're on their mailing list, which I know I am, I get first releases for stuff. I get first access to sale. I know H&M do that really, really well as well by being a H&M member. So I almost feel part of that community. It isn't, from a H&M perspective, it isn't as much on the emotive side of things. But we're all very, very selfish human beings, and we always like to know that we're getting things first before someone else, and it also brings in that FOMO as well. So if you're not doing that, it's probably worth kind of looking at techniques like that to build your community. Another one is Lounge Underwear. Now, Lounge Underwear is another brand that I do really, really love and I am fond of because I've watched them from the ground up and how they've built their digital community. So it only felt right to bring them into this example. So Lounge are, if you don't know about them, they're a premium loungewear brand, and a lot of what they do is based around body positivity and empowerment, which is obviously a very big and rightly so topic at the moment. And having people that have those values themselves are more likely to buy from that brand. Another one that does it well, controversially, is Savage Fenty. A little bit different because Savage Fenty almost do kind of a pyramid scheme. So people have that kind of, I don't want to get involved in that, which is absolutely fine. It's kind of a subscription model, but a lot of people have spoken about it being almost like a pyramid scheme. However, they kind of tap into that empowerment and using a wide, diverse range of models as well, to almost get those brand values across. And what Lounge have also done really well is they do a breast cancer awareness campaign every single year. And I think I've had it before. I think they sell some of their stuff for quite cheap, but it ends up, or was it quite cheap or a low amount, something like that. And all the money goes to breast cancer awareness, basically. So that helps to build a community once again with values that are aligned to their customers. So, as I've spoken about, a big part of their brand strategy is inclusivity and body positive. User generated content comes into that as well. They have brand ambassadors, they have community events, a little bit like Gymshark, and also exclusive offers and previews of their products as well. I know that these are very B2C centric examples, but what I'm trying to get across is that probably the biggest part of this is making sure that whatever you do from a community is aligned with your brand values and your customers' brand values. And we will move on to kind of how you can understand your customers a lot more, because everyone in the marketing sphere says you need to know about your customers, but I feel like sometimes they don't kind of delve into how we do that. So that is in a later slide, so don't worry about that one. Another big one, which is Sephora, which probably isn't as big in the UK, but definitely when I go to European countries, I love going into Sephora. I think they opened one in London. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think they opened one in London recently. So, and they are online as well. So Sephora is obviously, if you don't know what Sephora is, it's a beauty giant. It's basically like the improved version of Superdrug and Boots, basically, to put it bluntly. And their marketing strategy is heavily built on getting their customers involved. And this is another big thing as well, is talking to your customers, listening to your customers, asking them what they want, and then acting on that. I've got a really good example of that, which I'll move on to on a later slide as well. So they have their Beauty Insider community, which kind of gives a platform to people that love beauty and love makeup, for instance, and to be able to talk about the products that they love and do that on a community-based platform. They are also big with inclusivity and diversity, and also coming into that is user-generated content. So quite similar to a couple of the other examples that I've mentioned. So one big thing that I wanted to mention, and I feel like when people talk about digital communities, no one is really talking about this, and what this actually means, I think, is the biggest thing, and how platforms are already adapting to digital communities. So I think we might all remember the new feature that Instagram officially launched in the UK in September, and that was Instagram Broadcasts. Now, Instagram Broadcasts are available only for creator accounts, which you're probably questioning, well, how does that come into a brand strategy? However, there's one really, really handy feature within that, and it is collaborations. So if you have an influencer that you're working with, or a content creator, I hate the word influencer, but if you have an influencer that you're working with and they have a really strong broadcast group, let's say they've got 10,000, that's quite big. let's go 5,000. Let's say they've got 5,000 people within their broadcast community. You know that those people in that broadcast community have actively said that they want to be in that broadcast community and that they are most likely listening to what that influencer says. Now, say that you're doing a brand campaign with that influencer for a latest product that you're building. There is a handy feature within broadcast that allows you to have like a partnership label, a little bit like what you can do on feed posts. Now, you might be thinking, but that has a smaller visibility than if I had done a collaboration on a feed post. But the difference is that those broadcast groups are based on those close-knit people in their own communities, in their own influencer communities, that are interested in what they have to say, have already bought into that influencer, and almost you could kind of, they could promote a product, say that they absolutely love it, and if they have done it well, their audience will believe what they're saying. So that is how brands can really use these broadcast communities almost to their advantage, especially if you're doing brand partnerships. And when I talk about influencers, I don't just mean massive influencers with thousands of followers that are kind of almost in the kind of B2C fashion beauty spectrum. When I talk about influencers, influencers also are people with influence. And there are a lot of creators and a lot of creator accounts in various niches that have a large following that might not necessarily be beauty related or fashion related. So it's about looking at those people within your industry that already have a big following, even if that's a singular person, has that influence, no matter how many followers they have, and kind of looking at their broadcast communities and going, right, okay, so 5% of their following is in that broadcast community. That's actually quite a good amount if you think about all of those people are already bought into that influencer rather than just following because they like the person, for instance. So yeah, when I talk about influencers, definitely kind of look at them based on these are people with influence rather than people with massive followings, because micro influencers are also going to be massive. Sorry, my mum has just texted me. Okay, so looking on to section 3, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty now of how to actually build a digital community for your business. Now, keep all of those examples in mind that I've spoken about, because we're going to actually use that for kind of building our digital communities and looking at strategies. So the key thing is, what do customers want from online communities? This is a really good survey done by HubSpot, and it talks about the 7 benefits of online communities. So I'm going to have to go very forward for this because my eyesight is awful. But they want to learn new things. They want ideas and inspiration. They want to meet and interact with people with similar values to them. They want entertainment, a sense of belonging, which is one that I've spoken about when I say they want to feel part of something bigger than themselves, a support system, and an escape. So one thing that, very interestingly, one thing that pretty much all of those have in common is being emotive and tapping into emotion and tapping into feelings. And that is going to be the biggest thing. If you're building a digital community, you need to think, it sounds really blunt, but you need to think, would my customers care if they were part of this community? If it doesn't offer them anything, if it doesn't relate to their pain points, their gain points, would they want to come into this community? So really question that when you're creating that community as well, and tap into that emotion and do a lot of kind of research about what your customers want. And like I said, we will move on to how you can do that in a bit as well. So before building a community, we need to analyze who are our customers, what are the needs of our customers, basically everything that I've just said. What are our customers' pain points? How do we effectively communicate with our customers, and where are our customers? They're probably the biggest things, because we're able to build a digital community based on that. So this is the slide that I've kind of spoken about a lot, and it's, how is this done? So customer insight is probably the biggest one for me, and we did this a lot at my old job as well. And it was directly talking to customers and asking them what they want. I think in the world of marketing, there is a lot of, and rightly so, you go down kind of a rabbit hole of assumption. And I have done it before where I have assumed that I know what customers want because I've worked with them for so long, and you think, yeah, surely they'd want this. And when you actually do that customer insight and directly talk to that customers, you realize actually what I thought they wanted is totally different. Now, when I talk about customer insight and talking to customers, you don't need to have 300 customers that you sit on a call for half an hour and ask them about kind of how they feel about certain things. It could be certain customers that have bought from you for a long time, that maybe are new customers. There are a lot of agencies out there that will conduct the customer insight for you as well. So it is definitely worth looking at. And what that does is it just talks directly to your customers and asks them what they want. There are many other ways that you can do this if you don't want to do it based on qualitative research. You can do quantitative, so you can send out surveys, but obviously quantitative data, such as surveys with a yes or no answer, or with kind of pigeonholing into certain questions, is a lot harder because you don't have those open-ended questions. So you can't necessarily go back and say, well, actually, can you expand on this point? So just keep that in mind when you're looking at customer insight. Analyzing existing analytics is going to be your best friend. Whenever I take on a new client, I always ask them what data do they have already and what analytics do they have already, because that is going to be massively key to kind of look at what's happened in the past and what you want to build on in the future. Customer journey mapping as well is also a big one. A SWOT analysis, which might seem like quite a basic one, but I always find that doing a SWOT analysis, and I used to hate doing a SWOT analysis, but I find that doing a SWOT analysis almost gives me the ideas of, right, I'm in kind of the customer and who the customer is now, and what are the strengths of our businesses, what are our weaknesses, where can we build opportunity based on, for instance, building that community, and what are the threats of potentially other competitors. So other competitors might have a bigger community and they might have the same target audience than you have, and then you kind of say, right, how do I actually kind of get those customers, because our customer pool is a lot smaller because this competitor that we have is almost taking that audience from us. So doing that SWOT analysis really helps. A competitive analysis, a little bit like what I've just touched on, looking at what your competitors are doing. If your competitors don't have a community, or you can't see that they have a community, or you think that the community that they have is quite weak, you almost have that opportunity to tap into their target audience. So do a competitor analysis and just know where you are in the competitor space against those competitors. A value proposition canvas is also really, really helpful. If you've never used a value proposition canvas, there's a lot of templates for it online. And what that does is basically it helps you create, like it says, your value proposition. So your value proposition, you can have an overall, you can have an overall business value proposition, but you might end up looking at it and saying, right, I need a social only value proposition as well. And that feeds into our overall value proposition. So look at a value proposition canvas because it helps to understand what customers want from you and what they want from your value proposition. Empathy canvas mapping as well is really, really good. I would do them both at the same time. Empathy canvas mapping is really, really good to understand your customers' emotions. And like I've mentioned a lot, I feel like it's like take a shot every time I mention emotions, but the biggest thing is that you need to tap into those emotions, and an empathy canvas map is great for that. And then finally, market research as well. So you've kind of got your primary research with the customer insight, but also I find that it helps to layer on that secondary research as well. You can tell that I've just come out of a 4-year degree apprenticeship because I still use Google Scholar, for instance. So if you can get your hands on looking at free resources via Google Scholar or free journal articles, then it really, really does help. I had a pitch that I was doing at my old place, and a lot of what we did was that market research, and I used a lot of secondary research for that. And it was really, really helpful because it kind of gave that overall idea of things. And then we kind of said we would layer on with that direct customer insight. So all of these are really, really helpful for understanding your customers. Now we're getting on to the fun bit, which is the building. So I feel like we've talked a lot about strategy and the why and who our customers are. But now I'm going to talk about kind of who your brand community is. Now we know who our brand community is, and we're going to start building. So like I've mentioned, these do relate to B2B and B2C. I'm going to try and use both examples because I know that there's people from both industries. In all honesty, there will probably be more B2C examples because it's so much easier to give B2C examples for communities. But as I've mentioned, you can also use communities for B2B industries as well. So we're going to move on to how to build up your digital community. So this is almost a theory that I put forward to every single one of my clients whenever I start work with them. And it's based on the 80-20 content rule. Now, I'm not claiming that I've come up with all of this myself, and I'm sure probably someone has done something very, very similar. But this is just how I kind of look at things within my head. And it is kind of the aspects that make up a cake, because we all love cake and tiered cakes. So at the bottom, we've got engaging content. So this is basically the winning content formula that you will need whenever you write a piece of content, whenever you look at social media strategy, whenever you look at overall campaign strategy as well, it's really helpful for. So at the bottom, we've got engaging content. So that is 40% of your cake almost. It's the bottom tier. And it's used to build up engaged communities, increase overall brand awareness. And this then indirectly feeds into sales. So building content around what your customers want to engage with. Now, I can't say what kind of content your customers will want to engage with, because that is all going to come from what I've said about kind of knowing your customers and doing your customer insight and doing your target audience research and secondary research, but creating content that you know that they're going to want to engage with. There has been a stat that came out that said that people are engaging less, especially on Facebook, and they're engaging less with brands as well. So make sure that your content is going to want to give your target audience a reason to engage with you. The next part of the cake is equally weighted. I actually edited this myself because I found a tiered cake that had 2 tiers at the bottom that was the same size. So let's just ignore that there is a little bit of the informative content is a little bit smaller than engaged. But anyway, 40% of your content should be informative content. So it should give your customers information. And if we look back to, I think it was the Hootsuite one, we look back to the Hootsuite bar chart, it did say that when people are involved in customer communities, they do want that informative content. They want to be given content that is going to be helpful for them at the end of the day. And a lot of that comes from, once again, your target audience research and knowing what kind of information your customers are going to want. Do not fall into the trap of teaching your customers how to suck eggs, basically, because your customers, especially in a B2B environment, if you're selling a very niche B2B product, most likely they already have industry knowledge of that product or that industry, for instance. So don't teach them how to suck eggs, but do give them that informative content that you do know that they might not know about, or that you think is going to give them value, especially if it relates to your product. So your product ends up giving this kind of can't think of the word, solution to their issue, and this is why, basically. And then 20% should be directly promotional content. So if you're 80% of what you're doing via your content is just pushing out your brand and your product, ideally I would stop, because you're not, I always say this, and this sounds really, really blunt, but your customers do not care about your product. And what I mean by that is that your customers don't care about your product in itself or your business in itself. They care about what they're going to get from it. And that is where the building communities comes in as well. So I always use the example of a car manufacturer. Car manufacturers never, ever, ever go, buy this car, full stop, it's red. Because there are so many cars out there as well that you could buy a red car from anywhere. What they do is they tap into the latest technology and the feelings that it gives, and the kind of new safety mechanisms keeping you and your family safe, and all of those little things. So whenever you talk about your promotional content, also make sure that it is feeding into that emotive, and it does also come back to that engaging and informative content as well. So whenever you need to, I would definitely think about this cake, because it has helped me a lot over the years when it comes to putting together strategies. So I'm just going to go through some of the key channels and tactics. When I did put this together, I didn't want to just focus on social media, because even though social media is great for creating digital communities, because like I said at the start, you've got such a massive reach, it isn't going to be your only channel, and you're going to be able to use other channels to your advantage. So social media is great because it can be targeted to your existing audience, especially if you've got an existing following and it's quite big and you know that they're pretty much quite engaged as well, then you've already got that foundations already. So I'm not saying don't use it. It's probably going to be key for building digital strategies, but also feed in other channels as well. Another key one is using social media ads. So you can retarget existing customers with community campaigns, such as encouraging user-generated content. The Facebook pixel, for instance, is going to be your best friend. So, for example, if you have, you know that you're a B2C industry, and you take all the data from your customers that bought your product a month ago, for example, and you're targeting them with ads, you can then use that data to kind of get them to do user-generated content, basically. And it's another channel to be on. Email marketing is another way as well. You can do a lot of personalization with email marketing. There is so many good email marketing platforms out there that really help with personalization, and personalization is also going to be massive as we go into 2024 as well. So make sure to be using that personalization, and AI is going to be a big part of that as well. Influencers, make sure you use influencers that align to your brand, business, and values. I know I've said this before, but make sure that the influencers that you collaborate with aren't just the ones with the biggest following. They're also the ones that basically are going to represent your brand. And actively engage with your community. So if you're not replying to comments, if you're not replying to messages, that you've already fallen at the first hurdle, basically, because they're not going to feel like they're part of a community. They're not going to feel like they're heard. They're not going to feel like they're listened to, and they're going to feel like, why would I want to actively engage in a community because they've not engaged with me before? So make sure to also respond and actively talk to your customers as you go. So the biggest thing is speak their language. So using the data from your audience insight piece, create a content plan which aligns to your audience's values and showcases how your brand solves their pain points. Your value canvas map and your empathy canvas map are going to be massive with that. But like I said, also layer on that primary customer insight and also secondary data there as well. People do not buy without trust. If they do not trust a brand, or they do not feel aligned to their brand, they are not going to buy your product unless you are pretty much the only one in your niche. This is specifically for B2B, the only one in your niche that sells what you do, because they have no choice. And if they need that exact product, they've got nowhere else to go. So that is the only alternative, but there's very, very few businesses like that. So make sure to kind of build that loyalty and trust. An example is Disney, and I love this example because I've never thought about how good Disney are when it comes to building a community. And I always laugh, they almost have a little bit of a cult following as well. So you've got your die-hard Disney fans, but Disney do it really, really well because they tap into the emotional side of marketing. And this example is obviously goes beyond social media, and it goes beyond digital as well, because if you look at it, they have the Disney theme parks. I know I was lucky enough to go to Disneyland Paris last year with my friend, and I'd always wanted to go. And it was one of the most magical places of my life, because whatever you watch in their movies is almost you're experiencing it in real life, and it taps into that emotion element. And I kind of, when I read this example, I kind of did those been done already without realizing it, because it really does tap into that emotion. So yeah, their commitment to quality plays a significant role in cementing its status as it's a reliable and esteemed brand. I feel like Disney is kind of an entity in its own. When you have Disney, you have Disney. And the emotion is really, really massive with that one as well. And they've done it so well for years and years and years, despite obviously there's controversies with Disney and whatever else. But for the sake of this example, I think the emotion is a big part of this. I've said this quite a lot in this webinar, but making them feel part of something bigger than themselves. And that also goes back to the Hootsuite bar chart that we spoke about as well. So as humans, we love to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we love to feel valued. We won't spend time on something where we don't see any value in, because we are very, very busy people at the moment. And there are so many brands out there that are trying to get our loyalty and trust that we constantly feel sold to all the time. So build your community so it is got the customer at the heart of everything that you do. And you're probably listening to this going, yeah, but that's so easy. That's a bit obvious. But it is very easy to fall down the trap hole of thinking, I think I know what my customers want. I think I know what they find value in. Building your community and no one joins it because you've almost missed that. So do a little bit of testing as well. So an example of this is Lego Ideas, and Lego is another one that has a really, really big community. So fans can submit their own Lego ideas and community videos to basically this website hub. And it is basically just a community hub. It allows people that absolutely love Lego to be involved and showcase their Lego creations, and also kind of comment on others. And it gives a sense of ownership and contribution, once again, making them feel something part of something bigger than themselves and making them feel valued. Get your customers involved is such a big one as well. I know I've mentioned a lot about talking to your customers and getting your customers involved and actively listening to your customers, but never assume you know what your customers want. I did say when I spoke about this at the start of the presentation that I was going to show a really good example, and it was one example that came to mind. So we're going to go on to that example and hopefully unlock some core memories. But asking your customers what they want, asking what promotions they want, asking them kind of what products they want next, really, really get them involved. Whether, like I said, that's quantitative research, so whether you're using surveys on email or on website for that, or whether you're using qualitative research and saying, right, I've got 3 of our key customers, which specifically you might see in B2B, because obviously what you're selling is a lot lower than B2C if you're kind of a high-end fashion brand and constantly selling. But talk to your customers and ask them what they want. Ask them what they want to see and get them actively involved, because once again, it makes them feel part of something bigger than themselves and they feel listened to and valued. So here is the example, and it's Walkers. And Walkers do this really, really well, because this specific example basically allowed people to choose which flavor they wanted to keep and get rid of, basically. And as you'll see there, over a span of 10 weeks, consumers cast over 770,000, which is crazy, votes to select their preferred flavors. So they actually had an uplift in value sales for their core classic flavors due to this. And this is a really good way of using your community. And when I said this will end up at the end of it will end up increasing your overall sales, this is kind of what I mean. Getting customers involved, asking them what they want and getting them to participate. I know years and years and years ago, and I'm talking when I was in primary school, so when I was probably about 10 years old, Walkers did the same thing where you could choose the next flavor of crisps that you wanted to keep. So this was mainly based on what you want to get rid of. But I know that they constantly did which ones you want to keep. So this is a really good example that I would keep in mind, that you can use from specifically B2C, but you can also probably get creative and look at it in a B2B environment as well. And just kind of use this example as inspiration, I think, is the biggest one. Another one is encourage user-generated content, which is easier said than done, and I probably got some eye rolls from it, because everyone says we need user-generated content, but it is the hardest thing in the world to get. And if you work in marketing, you know that unless you're a massive, massive brand and already established, it can be really, really hard to generate. So I do appreciate that. But offer a hook which makes your audience want to post, such as winning a prize, getting their content featured, or just giving your customers bragging rights. And I'm going to show an example which gives customers bragging rights. And this example is Apple's Shot on iPhone campaign. Now, this is brilliant because what it does is it gets iPhone users to share the photos that they've taken on their iPhone, especially if you love photography and you're wanting to imagine if you love photography and you're wanting to get featured and you get featured by Apple. That's such a massive thing, and it's great for bragging rights and feeling part of something bigger than yourself. So this is a really good example. Now, the only thing with this example is that obviously Apple are a massive corporation. They have a massive following already. So it is quite difficult to kind of relate this back to a smaller business who's just kind of building up. But it'll hopefully still inspire and spark some ideas of how you can get your customers involved, maybe on a smaller scale. So we are nearly done. So I know that I do talk a lot, but I just wanted to put forward a community journey example, just so we could put the examples, put what we've just spoken about into real life. So here I've put together an example, and it's honestly, it's the most random example ever. But say I'm a person and I've just followed a brand on social media. And then I find the brand informative and I decide to sign up to their newsletter because I'm getting quality from what they're putting on social. And I think I want kind of more updates via social media. I receive the newsletter for a product. I then purchase the product. So you can kind of see how we're using an omni-channel approach and many, many different channels to interlink this and not just focusing on social. I then received a follow-up email asking for user-generated content, or I saw an ad on social media asking for user-generated content. I then absolutely love the product. I love the brand. I'm already bought in. So I post user-generated content and I show off the new product, and then I get involved in their online groups. So Facebook groups are good for this, which you might think are potentially dying. But if you think about how many people are involved in community groups on Facebook, it's crazy. So you can still use it. You've just got to kind of make sure that you use it. So you're going to want your customers to be involved. And then finally, we're going to move on to kind of how are they measured. So you can measure them through many, many different ways. So engagement, growth, retention, brand advocacy, and impact on business goals and KPIs. I will send these slides over as well at the end, just so you can kind of have another look back over them. But what this does is it allows you to look at these metrics and then go back to whoever is your higher up, especially if you've invested into your digital community, and say, look, this is what we've done through our digital community, and this is how we've grown. Some of these are so engagement and growth of followers. Mainly growth of followers might seem like a vanity metric, but for something like this, and I always say with vanity metrics, it feeds into the bigger picture. So whenever anyone says I do not want to report on vanity metrics, it feeds into that bigger picture. So you wouldn't just say we've had 10% growth in followers, great. Build onto the engagement, right? We've had an increased engagement, and then we can also align that with we've had X amount of sales, which we know through Google Analytics have contributed to social. So it builds that overall picture. And then finally, we're going to move on to what is coming next. So personalization is a big thing that I know that I'd spoken about a few slides ago, and using AI to help that as well. A lot of marketers, whenever they talk about AI, they kind of shy away from it a little bit because they think it's going to take the jobs. It's not. It's going to make our jobs a lot easier. And there are stuff that AI can do that the stuff that people can do that an AI just isn't capable of at the moment. Use it as your friend rather than your enemy. And I'm not saying make everything AI generated. Of course, I'm not. And I'm not saying even use half of it that's AI generated. But AI is great for personalization, and customers are wanting to have more personalized content. There's so many studies about it at the moment. So definitely look at personalization. Customers will be more picky with brands that they engage with. I have already mentioned this one, and I've actually put the source in here as well. So well done me for actually remembering. But brands are seeing less organic engagement, and people are engaging less as well. So make sure that what you're posting specifically on social media is going to be something that your customers are going to want to engage with, because they are getting a lot more picky, and they won't just join any community. They're going to want to join a community they see value in. People will win over consumers. People buy from people. Specifically in B2B, a lot of B2B clients that I've had in the past have kind of said, but we're B2B, this doesn't come into it. Of course it does. People buy from people. If you're a person within a business and you're wanting to purchase from another business, 9 times out of 10, you're going to talk to a person. You're going to talk to a salesperson. You're going to talk to kind of whoever is heading up that business. So people buy from people. So showcase those people in your brand and show the genuine side to your brand as well, and add that into your community. Employee advocacy is going to be massive as well. So don't be afraid to get your employees involved in your community either. Brand values will be a non-negotiable. This is another massive one. I think a lot of the trend reports are coming out now as well. And a big part of the trend reports were brand values. And I expect this to be exactly the same for 2024 as well. So 76 of customers believe in kind of social and political issues due to natural disasters or crisis. Education's in there, environmental issues, human rights. Sustainability is also a big topic, but make sure that you're not greenwashing, because I feel like every single brand is talking about sustainability even when they're not sustainable. No shade there. But what I'm trying to say is that people are seeing through those brands. So make sure that whatever you do is genuine and has value as well. So just putting forward some final considerations just to kind of round everything up that we've talking about. Put yourself in your customer's shoes. This sounds really blunt, but ask yourself, would I want to be involved in this community? And if the answer is no, look back at kind of what you did with your customer insight and try to get that right. There will be a lot of testing. It will not happen overnight. And it will take a long time as well to build. So if you start now, just think about where you'll be in a year. Targeting, make sure you're targeting the right people. A lot of that will come back down to kind of knowing your customers and using those kind of tools that I spoke about. Value, are you providing value? It is a community, not a dictatorship. That is one thing that I kind of wanted to write and kind of bring forward, is that a lot of brands potentially think, right, we've got a community, we can kind of use our community to dictate to them. Do not do that. Talk to your customers, get them involved, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to be purchasing and bringing in the revenue. And difference. Do you offer a community that's different to your competitors, and how is it different? This comes back to the competitor analysis that you would have done, and there's a reason why I suggested doing a competitor analysis, but it gives you a good idea of seeing where you are in the overall sphere. And finally, we've come to the end. I am so glad that I haven't gone over 12 o'clock, because I do talk a lot. And if you know me, you know that I do. But if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A or the chat box, and I will go through and answer them in the last couple of minutes. Thank you. I hope you found that helpful. If any of you have any questions, feel free to write them in now. I'm going to grab a drink because I've been talking for near enough an hour and I'm not used to it. Also, just a side note, obviously, thank you for listening. It's really nice that I've had more than my mum and dad on this webinar. This is the first one that I've done for Silly Goose Digital. I'm going to do more in the new year as well. So please make sure to mention us at Silly Goose Digital, or my own LinkedIn, which is Rebecca Weeble. With your thoughts and insights from today's session. I'd really love to hear your feedback. So also, if you don't want to kind of drop anything in the chat box today, feel free to message me and just let me know how you felt this session was. If you have any improvements, please let me know and I'll take it into account for next time. And yeah, just kind of let me know if you've got any thoughts, if you found it helpful. And obviously, if you start building your digital communities, I'd also love to know how it's going as well, because it's going to be, like I said, so massive in next year and beyond. Yeah, and like I said, I will also send an email just to kind of say thank you for participating, etc. I will add the slides to the email. I will also add the recording of this session to the email. I'm just double checking that it has recorded. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. I will add the recording to the email as well. And I will also add that Sprout Social report that I did mention, because that's going to be really, really helpful. It's a very, very short report, but it does also give quite good infographics on there. So if you wanted to delve a little bit deeper into the why, then I'll add that on there. Okay, I don't think anyone's got any questions, so I'm just going to draw this session to a close. Like I said, if you did enjoy it or have any thoughts, insights, etc., feel free to drop me a message. Feel free to mention us at Silly Goose Digital, and fingers crossed, hopefully I'll see you on my next webinar very, very soon. Thank you. Have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.